She made a promise beneath the stars. I'll come back for you. But when her ship vanished into a mysterious rift, everyone assumed she was lost forever. Until 6 years later, something returned. It looked like her, spoke like her. But it wasn't quite the same. What happened beyond the edge of space? And can love survive what the universe transforms? If you're new here, make sure to subscribe to the channel and show your support by giving this video a thumbs up. Now, let's dive into this powerful and unforgettable story. Nolan sat at the edge of the colony's docking platform, his boots swinging over the side as he looked out at the endless sky above planet Sierra. The twilight was soft, with streaks of blue and amber painting the sky, and the stars had just started to appear, bright dots shining against the darkening horizon. Ships moved silently across the sky like glowing fish in a vast ocean. But Nolan wasn't watching the ships. His eyes were locked on one person, Rena. She stood near the launch bay, her figure small against the sleek shape of the Explorer-class shuttle behind her. Her long, dark coat flapped slightly in the breeze, and her fingers nervously tapped against the datapad in her hands. She was about to leave on the most important mission of her life, and perhaps the most dangerous. Rena was not just another pilot. She had spent the last 5 years mapping stars no one else had ever seen. She dreamed of touching the edges of the known galaxy. When the space agency on Sierra discovered a strange rift in a distant sector, something that defied explanation, they chose Rena to go. She accepted without hesitation. That's who she was. Brave, driven, full of wonder, and full of secrets. Nolan and Rena had been friends since their early days at the academy. Over time, that friendship had turned into something deeper, something neither of them spoke about too often. But it was there, between every shared laugh, every long night repairing ships, every quiet look. It was there now, burning between them as Nolan walked toward her. "You're really going," he said softly, stopping just a few feet away. Rena looked up at him, her smile warm but uncertain. "You know I have to. No one else can handle the navigation near the rift. It's unstable, but I've studied it. I've seen patterns others missed." Nolan nodded, but his chest felt heavy. He wanted to tell her not to go, to stay here, with him, where it was safe. But he knew he couldn't. That wasn't love. Love was letting her chase what she believed in, even if it meant watching her vanish into the stars. She stepped closer, close enough that he could see the faint freckles on her cheeks. "Nolan," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Promise me something." "Anything," he said without thinking. "Promise you won't forget me," she said. Then, after a pause, she added, "Promise you'll wait." Nolan stared into her eyes, and for a moment the noise of the colony disappeared. The engines, the voices, the rushing footsteps. It was just the two of them in that moment, as if time had paused for their final goodbye. "I'll wait," he said, "for as long as it takes." Rena smiled, and something about it made Nolan feel like she was burning her memory into him, like she wasn't sure she'd ever return, but wanted to be remembered no matter what. She leaned in, resting her forehead against his. "I will come back," she whispered, "no matter what's out there." Then she pulled away, walked to the ship, and stepped through the hatch without looking back. Nolan watched her disappear into the vessel's body. The engines began to warm, glowing, bright underneath the silver hull. The countdown echoed through the platform speakers. Nolan didn't move. As the ship lifted into the sky, he felt his heart rise with it, pulled along by hope and fear. It climbed higher and higher, until it became just another star in the sky. And then it was gone. In the days that followed, Nolan returned to his work at the space dock, but something inside him had shifted. He no longer laughed the same way. His hands were still steady, his repairs still perfect, but his thoughts were always elsewhere. Always with Rena. Every night he climbed to the roof of the communications tower and looked up at the stars, searching for her trail. He downloaded the logs from deep space every morning, hoping to see her name, a ping from her ship, a voice note, anything. But nothing came. Weeks passed, then months. Still nothing. People at the colony assumed the mission was taking longer than planned. The rift was strange after all. Time moved differently in deep space, but Nolan felt something colder in the silence, like the stars were hiding something from him. He didn't speak much anymore, not unless he had to. Some of the younger engineers called him the Watcher, because he always sat alone on the tower, scanning the sky. He didn't care. They hadn't known Rena. They didn't understand the kind of promise she had made, and the kind of promise he had made back. Sometimes when the winds were quiet and the stars bright, he imagined her voice beside him, laughing, telling stories, promising again that she'd come back. He would smile at nothing because for a second it felt like she was there, but every morning he woke up alone. Still, he waited. Because love, real love, doesn't vanish when the ship lifts off. It doesn't fade when the stars don't answer. It waits. And so did Nolan, believing that one day, one impossible, beautiful day, Rena would return from the rift, just as she said she would. Nolan stood at the edge of the old observation deck, staring into the night sky above Sierra. The stars glittered the same way they always had, like small promises hanging in the darkness. But to him, they had started to feel colder, quieter. It had been nearly 2 years since Rena's ship had vanished into the unknown. 2 years of waiting, 2 years of hoping, 2 years of silence. The colony had changed during that time. New buildings rose, machines moved faster, and a fresh generation of workers filled the walkways. People came and went, ships landed and launched. Life pushed forward. But Nolan stayed the same. Every evening he climbed to the same place and searched the stars. Every morning he checked the long-range scanners and communication logs. Most days there was nothing, just routine transmissions, static from distant storms and empty space. His friends had stopped asking him to join them for dinner or drinks. Even Commander Duran, who once admired Nolan's attention to detail, had gently suggested it was time to let go. "I know it's hard," Duran had said one evening as they watched the stars together. "But she's been gone a long time. You can't let the past stop your life." But Nolan didn't believe Rena was just the past. He had felt something the night she left, the way she looked at him, the way she held his hand. Promises like that didn't just disappear, not without a reason. One afternoon, while scanning the outer signal bands, a strange transmission came through. Nolan leaned in, adjusting the frequency. For a moment it was just static. Then, through the noise, a faint voice. Broken, but familiar. "Rena. Here. Found. Not alone." Nolan froze. The signal cut off just as quickly as it had come. He sat in stunned silence, replaying the transmission again and again. It was her voice. He was sure of it. Raspy, strained, but definitely Rena. He ran to Commander Duran's office, barely able to form a sentence. Duran listened to the playback, his face tight with concern. "It's not much," he said, adjusting the filters. "Could be a recording. Could be interference." "It's her," Nolan insisted. "She's out there." Duran sighed. "We'll send a report to the agency, but without coordinates, there's not much we can do." Nolan didn't wait. That night, he returned to the signal tower and started searching again, adjusting frequencies, tracking the waveform, comparing it to old mission data. He barely slept. He ate only when someone brought him food. A young engineer named Lyra started checking on him, leaving coffee and sandwiches by his workstation. "You look like a ghost," she said once with a sad smile. "Don't forget to take care of yourself." Nolan gave her a tired nod but said nothing. Lyra didn't press. She had heard the stories. Everyone in the colony knew about Nolan and Rena. Some thought it was romantic. Others thought it was tragic. A few just thought he was lost. Late one evening, Nolan found something new, a pattern hidden in the static. It repeated every 6 hours, almost like a heartbeat. The frequency wasn't natural. It pulsed too steadily, too intentionally. He brought it to Joran again, but the commander only shook his head. "It's interesting," he admitted, "but still not enough to act on." Nolan walked out without another word. He didn't need permission to believe. As days passed, rumors began to spread through the colony. Some workers whispered that Rena's mission had ended in disaster. Others claimed she had found something so strange it changed her. A few believed she had become something else entirely, something no longer human. Nolan ignored the talk. He focused on the signals, the data, the pieces of the puzzle. The heartbeat pattern continued, growing slightly stronger with each cycle. Lyra started helping him, curious about what he had found. "It's like she's knocking on the door," she said one night. "But we don't know how to open it." "Not yet," Nolan replied. He started building a custom receiver, tuning it to match the exact rhythm of the strange signal. He stayed up night after night, eyes red from lack of sleep, fingers shaking as he tightened wires and adjusted controls. The colony moved on around him, but he stayed locked in a quiet war against the silence. And then one night, the signal changed. It wasn't static anymore. It was music, soft, slow, a melody Rena had once played on her pocket synthesizer when they were alone in the workshop. Nolan closed his eyes. He remembered her fingers dancing over the keys, the way her head tilted when she was lost in sound. It wasn't just a message, it was a memory, a piece of her. He sat back in his chair, overwhelmed. She was alive. Somewhere, somehow she had found a way to reach out. But if she was alive, why wasn't she coming home? What was keeping her away? That question haunted him more than any silence ever had. Nolan looked out the window at the stars, his reflection pale against the glass. There were shadows in the sky, places light didn't touch, places maps didn't cover. That's where Rena was, somewhere out there, beyond what they understood. He reached for his notebook, flipping to a blank page. He began to write. Not words, but coordinates, equations, pulse rhythms, everything he had collected. If the colony wouldn't help, he'd find someone who would. Or he'd go himself, because silence wasn't the end. It was only the start of a deeper mystery, one that he was ready to solve. And in that silence he heard her voice again. Just a whisper. Just for him. "I'm still here." The ship named Arcfire hummed quietly as it drifted beyond the edge of mapped space. Inside the small command deck, Nolan sat strapped into a chair, watching the stars stretch like threads of light through the window. This was the furthest he had ever traveled from the colony, and yet, it didn't feel strange. It felt like he was finally going the direction he was meant to. For over 2 years he had waited. Now he was chasing a signal, a message, a promise. The crew around him was small but skilled. Talon, the pilot, was sharp-eyed and calm, a former scout who had flown missions beyond asteroid belts and icy moons. Naomi, the ship's science officer, had joined after hearing about the strange pulses Nolan discovered. She didn't fully believe in lost love stories whispered through static, but she believed in the science, and the signal had caught her attention. They were all there for different reasons, but the destination was the same, the rift. An anomaly in space first found years ago, just before Rena's mission vanished. Nolan had no doubt that what had pulled her away, and what had changed her, was connected to that strange tier in the universe. As they neared the coordinates, the stars outside began to blur. It was subtle at first, like a smudge on glass. Then, the sensors started flashing with warnings. The fabric of space itself was bending, shifting. It felt like sailing into a dream half remembered. Talon adjusted the controls, guiding Arcfire through the distortion carefully. "We're entering the rift's outer field," he said. "Readings are unstable, but manageable, for now." Naomi's eyes stayed on the data streaming across her console. "Energy levels here aren't natural. It's like the rules of physics are flexible." Nolan leaned forward. That's what she meant, he said softly. Rena. In her message, she said it wasn't like anything they had ever seen. The ship pressed deeper into the field, and the stars suddenly vanished. The view outside became pure black, dotted with streaks of glowing blue. The sensors picked up fragments, bits of metal, floating without direction. Nolan's heart sped up. Slow down, he said. This could be it. And then they saw it. A broken vessel drifted just beyond a swirl of light and shadow. The hull was damaged, scorched in places but still whole. Nolan recognized the shape instantly. It was Rena's ship. They approached slowly. The silence in the command deck was so thick Nolan could hear his own heartbeat. The docking was smooth and Talon gave a short nod. We're locked in. Inside the wreck, the lights flickered weakly. The air was thin but breathable. Strange, markings covered the walls, symbols that glowed faintly when touched. Naomi stared at them, confused. These weren't on the original design. Nolan moved ahead of the others, his flashlight scanning the empty corridors. The ship felt like a ghost. Everything was too still. But as they reached the control room, a blinking light caught his eye. It was a message beacon, still active. He pressed the playback button. A hologram shimmered to life in the air, and there she was, Rena. Her face was pale, her hair longer, and her eyes glowed faintly with a soft blue light. She looked directly into the camera, her voice steady though tired. If you're seeing this, then you found the ship. That means I didn't make it back. Or I'm still trying. She took a shaky breath. We passed through the rift. It pulled us into a different space. Time moves strangely here. We're not alone. There's something here, something old, intelligent. It doesn't speak in words, but in thoughts, in feelings. It showed me things, gave me knowledge, and it changed me. The hologram paused, her eyes looking far away. I'm not the same person anymore, but I remember who I was. I remember you, Nolan, and I'm trying to come home. The message ended. The room was silent. Naomi turned to Nolan. She's alive. She's something more, he whispered. They returned to Arcfire with fragments of data and energy readings that made no sense. Naomi was buzzing with theories, but Nolan was quiet. His thoughts were with Rena. She was out there, still reaching out. But what had changed her? And would she still be Rena when they found her? The rift pulsed ahead of them. Talon looked back. You still want to go in? Yes, Nolan said without hesitation. If she crossed it, so can we. The ship passed through a shimmer of light, and everything changed. The stars reappeared, but they were unfamiliar. The sky was a deep violet, and two suns burned above a nearby planet. It was beautiful and terrifying. Instruments scrambled to adjust. The crew held their breath. They had crossed into another part of the universe, or perhaps another version of it. Far off in the distance, hidden in the shadows of an asteroid belt, another ship waited, larger than anything the colony had built. Its design was smooth, almost grown rather than built. They approached carefully and found it still, but not empty. Inside, they discovered more symbols, more technology that seemed to respond to touch and thought. And in the control chamber, another message from Rena. She appeared again, this time standing tall, her voice stronger. I found them, she said. They chose me. I've learned so much, but I can't come back yet. Not until I understand what this power means. She smiled softly. I remember everything. I still love you, Nolan. Please wait just a little longer. The message faded. Nolan stared at the space where she had been. She was still out there, still holding on, and so was he. The colony was quiet that evening, wrapped in the soft light of a setting sun and the glow of distant stars. People moved through the streets slowly, voices low, glances drifting often toward the sky. News had spread fast. A ship was approaching, not one of theirs, not from any nearby station. A ship that moved unlike any other, its path smooth and strange, like it was following a rhythm only it could hear. Nolan stood at the top of the old communication tower, his hands gripping the railing, his eyes locked on the bright object growing larger in the sky. He didn't speak. He barely breathed. He knew that ship. Around him others gathered, engineers, students, workers, even children who had only heard stories. They all watched, wondering if the tales were true, wondering if the ghost from the stars had finally come home. The ship landed slowly, almost hesitantly, at the far end of the colony's spaceport. Its surface shimmered in the fading light as if it were alive. No markings, no flags, just the soft hum of unseen energy. When the hatch opened, silence fell over the crowd. A figure stepped out, tall, calm, graceful. At first glance, she looked human. But there was something different. Her movements were smooth, too precise. Her eyes glowed faintly with a pale blue light. The crowd didn't know what to think, but Nolan did. It was Rena. He moved without thinking, stepping through the crowd as people made way for him. Rena's eyes found his, and she smiled. A soft, familiar smile. "Nolan," she said, her voice still hers but layered, like more than one voice speaking at once. He stopped in front of her, heart pounding. "You came back. I told you I would." They stood there for a long moment, eyes locked, the world around them forgotten. Then slowly, he reached out. She took his hand. It was warm, real, but different, like touching starlight made solid. "I've changed," she said, as if reading his thoughts, "but I'm still me." "What happened to you?" he asked, his voice low. She looked out over the colony, her gaze distant. "When we crossed the rift, we entered a place beyond time, a place where thought and space were connected. The beings, they saw us. They touched our minds. Most of the crew couldn't handle it. Some faded, others vanished. I listened. I learned. They shared their knowledge with me, their power. It changed my body, my mind, but I never forgot who I was. I never forgot you." Nolan felt tears sting his eyes. Around them, the colony's leaders stepped forward, unsure of what to do. Commander Joran, older now, his face lined with worry, approached cautiously. "You say you're still Rena, but you're something else too. Are you a danger to us?" Rena looked at him calmly. "I came to help, but I also came with a warning. The beings I encountered are not cruel, but they are watchers. They are waking. They have seen this world, this colony, and they want to test us, not with violence but with pressure. They believe only those who adapt deserve to survive." Whispers passed through the crowd. Fear, wonder, curiosity. Joran crossed his arms. "And what do they want from us?" Rena shook her head. "Nothing yet, but soon something will come. A test. I don't know what form it will take, but it will push this colony to its limits." The leaders held a quiet discussion. Some wanted to isolate her. Others wanted to study her. But Nolan stood firm. "She's one of us," he said. "She never stopped being one of us. She waited. She survived. She came back to warn us. We have to listen." The days that followed were tense. Rena stayed near the edge of the colony, helping where she could. Her touch could repair machines instantly. She predicted weather changes before the satellites did. But some people still watched her with suspicion. Children were curious, often following her at a distance. Others avoided her completely. Nolan stayed close. He listened when she spoke of the stars, of thoughts that moved faster than light, of memories shared across galaxies. Sometimes she smiled like the old Rena. Other times she stared off into space as if listening to voices only she could hear. Then, one night the sky changed. Dark shapes appeared near the colony's edge, silent, massive, like shadows carved from night. Alarms sounded. Defenses were raised, people ran to shelters, but Rena didn't run. She walked to the command center, calm and focused. "They're not here to attack. she said. "They're here to see." The colony's weapons were ready. The air was thick with fear. But Rena stood in front of the gate, hands raised. The dark shape stopped. A beam of light scanned her, then flickered and vanished. "They understand now," she said quietly. "We're not enemies. We're curious, brave, human." The shapes faded into the sky, leaving only stars behind. The colony exhaled as one. Later, Nolan sat with Rena under the stars. She looked tired, her glow softer, her breath slow. "Are you okay?" he asked. "I used a lot of energy," she replied. "But I'm still here." He took her hand. "I kept my promise, I waited." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "And I kept mine. I came home." That night, under a sky full of stars and silence, they sat together. Not just survivors of a strange journey, but symbols of love, change, and the promise that some connections are strong enough to stretch across the universe and back again.